Hey, it's Anthony. Welcome back to Project Random. Today is going to be another life tips video, and the topic today is giving presentations. Now, I have to give a lot of presentations for both school and for work when I'm on work terms. So throughout my program, I've sort of gathered some tips that I feel everybody should know and keep in mind when they're giving a presentation. My tips are going to be based on, I guess, the two aspects of presentations. One will be the slideshow presentation itself, and the other will be presentation tips um, for yourself to keep in mind, sort of like body habits and or body language and nervous habits and that sort of thing. Um, so let's just jump right into it. I'll start off with the slideshow presentation itself. One of the key things that I find a lot of people do, and it's a big no-no and everybody knows it, but it's worth repeating because it's so important, is don't put too many words on a slide. Basically, your slides are kind of like, or your bullet points on your slides should just give a little tidbit of information, and then you are to do the rest of the speaking. You don't want the people who are watching your presentation to spend all their time trying to read the words that are on the slideshow and making sure they're keeping up when you're up there talking about what it is that the presentation is about. So the presentation should be you talking to them, with every now and then they can glance up and get a brief overview of what you're talking about while you're looking at that particular slide. Another thing that's really important to keep in mind is that you use a consistent theme throughout the whole presentation. So, when you're building a slideshow presentation, um, there's like built-in themes that you can pick, and it's very important to keep the theme the same throughout the whole presentation. Now, a lot of people will say, "Well, mix it up every now and then. It's nice." Yeah, maybe, but honestly, I would pick the just the standard. Every slide should have like a title at the top of the slide, and then your content should be below it, that sort of thing. Now, title slides can be a little bit more creative. That's where I tend to put in a little bit more creative emphasis. But everything should be right there in front of you, easy to look at, and it should be uniform throughout the whole slideshow, so that once they figure out how your slide, like they should be able to look at your first slide and understand how all the rest of your slides are going to be laid out. So that's something important to keep in mind. Another thing is to use a normal font. Don't use like Comic. First of all, don't use Comic Sans for anything ever, but other fonts like that where there's weird curves, or maybe they're more what's the word, where it looks like writing cursive, more cursive. Just stay away from those fonts. Use like your basic ones, your Times New Roman or your Arial or Calibri. I know everybody hates Calibri, but it's starting to grow on me a little bit. Use lots of pictures is another good tip. People care about pictures more so than words. And if you do have to put words on a slide, make sure that either there's like a picture over in the corner, or maybe if you have a slide that's all words, then have a slide that's a picture or a couple of pictures, so that you're not constantly bombarding with more words, 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 because then it just looks boring. You want to keep things interesting, so pictures and even clip art adds a lot. If you've got a slide where you have to put content on it, put a little bit of clip art in there, a little comic, or even, you know, just some arrows, some weird arrows or stars, or something like, if something particularly important, use some clip art to emphasize that, but make sure that it fits in with the theme of your slideshow. You don't want the blue and black slideshow to have like a yellow star sticking off. It's going to look weird. Um, the next one is one that I kind of used to be very guilty of overusing, and that's transitions, and along with that, animations. Minimal, 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 minimal. It's like something you should hardly ever use. Personally, I use like the most basic transitions between slides, like the fade out, fade in, or like the slide left, or yeah, slide out and slide in kind of thing. Um, Minimal transitions between slides. They should be short. They shouldn't be drawn out over a long period of time. You can adjust the time that each transition takes. And don't have your words flying in from all different corners and spiraling, and just have everything appear at once on the slide. That makes it a little bit easier for you too, because you don't, oftentimes when people have animations on their slides, they start clicking through and then they'll just start talking, and then there'll be like 3 more bullets that have to come up, but they're already done talking about the slide, so they're just like, oh yeah, these 3 bullets, I already talked about this, and then go on past it. And it just looks unprepared and bad. So have everything come up at once. And when you're picking your design, a lot of this is done for you because you've got the preset designs, but you can adjust the color schemes a little bit. Make sure that your color schemes are appealing and they're not too eccentric. So you don't want to have really bright, loud colors. You want something where it's either like a darker shade or a more tame shade of colors. Just because, especially if it's a dark room, you don't want people kind of squinting, and if it's a really bright like orange or red or a really bright yellow kind of color, people are going to be squinting trying to look at it in a dark room, and it's just bad. So that's basically my tips for the slideshow presentation itself. And now when you're actually doing the presentation, the tips that I have for you as a person presenting, the first and best tip I've ever received is to film yourself giving your presentation. It may seem really weird and awkward, and you say, I don't want to watch myself film it because it's weird. Well, it's going to make you 10 times better, easily. Because you, being the most critical person of yourself that there is, you're going to watch that video after you're done your presentation, and you're going to pick up on every little time you lifted your foot up and down, or you rubbed your fingers together, or did this, or all these little fidgety things that you're doing while you're presenting, little nervous tics. You're going to pick up on those, and you're going to realize that there's something you need to keep in your mind, and you're going to notice your posture. For example, I was slouching just now, so if I sit up a little bit more straight, I look a little bit better, probably, hopefully. So yeah, you're just going to pick up on all the weird things that you do, and you're going to pick up on yourself maybe talking too fast or too slowly, or not enunciating your words enough. And those are all really important things to keep your presentation both engaging and understandable, especially if you're the kind of person who is really nervous. Nervous people in slideshows tend to talk fast and blur their sentences together, and it's very important that you take your time while you're talking, especially if the people you're talking to either don't know you very well, so they're not used to listening to you, or if you're talking about a particularly complex or detailed or technical aspect of whatever it is you're discussing. It's important that you take it slow so that people have the time to let it sort of sink in and think about what it is you're exactly telling them. Don't use cue cards. I know a lot of people are really inclined to use cue cards because it makes them feel comfortable, and it gives them something to hold on to. I think that's one of the main reasons that people like cue cards, just because it's something to hold in your hands so that you don't have to be fidgeting. But don't use them. You should know your slideshow well enough that you don't need them, and to be honest, that's what the words on your slideshow are for. They're for you. They're your cues. If you don't know your slideshow well enough to talk about all your points based on very minimal bullets, like if you have many more than 4 or 5 bullets per slide, and you can't talk about that slide in its entirety without having cue cards in front of you, you don't know your presentation well enough. You need to go practice more. And you need to work on maybe you need to redesign your slides so that they are more helpful to you in cueing you into what you need to say. And the last tip, and it's something that I've been trying to do throughout this entire video, is to look at your audience. Look them straight in the eye, and a lot of people you get generally 3 sorts of people. You get the people who do it right and they look at their audience. You get the people who look all over the room while they're talking, and that's kind of weird, especially when they're pausing like I am right now. People tend, when they're thinking, they tend to look to look to the right, I guess, because I just looked to the right while I was thinking. That sort of thing. And it just looks weird because you're glancing back and forth while you're trying to think of answers, and it's strange. So it's just keep your eye contact, even if you have to think. You can glance away for a second, or you can glance at your slideshow. But that looks a little bit awkward as well, because then it's kind of like you're reaching for a safety net in your slideshow to try and remind you of things, and you should have it all up here. Like I said, you shouldn't need cue cards. And of course, the people who the other type of person is the person who reads off their slides. And then I'm going to talk about how we're going to improve this thing, and like, if you're going to be the person who reads off the slideshow, sit the hell down and let everyone else read the slideshow, because they can read faster than you can tell it to them, and they're probably going to enjoy it more if you're not mumbling at them facing the other way. So this video was longer than I intended it to be. I thought my tips would be a lot quicker than that, but hopefully you guys knew all this already. But if you didn't, hopefully you can sort of learn from it and adapt it into your presentation style so that you can become better at giving presentations. So I will see you guys tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed.